Well, good morning and welcome to our next Coffee with the Community. We're glad to highlight this morning a program that we've had, or a committee that we've had in the district for a number of years, and that's our Vision 2020 committee. And wanted to introduce you to some of their guiding principles and what creates this group. It's to move fast and move smart, to be good stewards of resources, do a few things well, to have ample infrastructure to support the work, to be outcomes-based as we develop measurements against a baseline, and then engage our faculty and staff to provide professional development. And so over the course of the last several years, this group has focused on the future of Liberty Public Schools in the areas of strategic planning, facilities master planning, as we've deployed one-to-one technology, as we looked and iterated Epic Elementary student data and looking at the effectiveness of our technology program through Clarity Bright Bites, and then most recently has landed on the Gallup student poll. Real quickly, the outcomes that we want are certainly for all graduates to have certain attributes, and we call these our learner attributes. The attributes include self-advocacy, persistence, integrity, critical thinking, being lifelong learners, creativity and innovation, communication, collaboration, to be socially responsible, and then certainly to be adaptable and flexible, whether they face college or whether a career of their choice. And so this leads us to this morning highlighting Vision 2020 and the work around the Gallup student poll. Most recently, we've transitioned from No Child Left Behind to the Every Student Succeeds Act, and with that act comes the desire to gauge students in non-cognitive skills. And so we embarked early on this year in the Gallup student poll for the first time. We had about 6,000 of our students in grades 5 through 12 participate in that survey. And the categories in the survey include assessing their levels of hope, engagement, career and financial literacy, as well as entrepreneurial skills. So this morning we are glad to have Dr. Corey Shear with us, who is one of our co-facilitators for our Vision 2020 team, alongside Charlene Armitage. But we're going to ask Corey to come up and share the work of this group. We appreciate his leadership and many in our audience who have served in the committee capacity over the course of the last several months. So, Dr. Shear.
Thank you. I've got a mic here. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you all. Good to see so many familiar faces and take just a moment to explain who I am and my role in the community. I'm a father of 4, first of all. So I have a 13-year-old at Liberty Middle School, an 11-year-old at Schumacher, and then soon to be 2 kindergartners at Schumacher. So a moment of silence for Mr. Gabriel over at Schumacher, and we've insisted that they are in separate classes. So we are the reason why we moved to Liberty was because of the school district. Actually, that was the one reason why we moved here. We had no other deciding factor, but the fact that we knew that Liberty was a very special place, and we've called it home now for 8 years. My role in this process over the last several months has been as a facilitator, as Dr. Tucker said, with Charlene Armitage, and we've really enjoyed that process. And one of our goals going into the last several months or this season was that we didn't want it to be about us. We wanted to be able to continue to move the energy and the focus back onto all of our district stakeholders, and we know that there are many district stakeholders. So our goal was to try to create contrast with the process as well as contrast with the discussion, and then how are we going to actually have actionable items that will be meaningful for the district and for our students. So it first started with a session where there were a few of us that gathered, and Dr. Williams and Dr. Tucker, Charlene and myself, we gathered and we tried to develop a mental model or an image of what the Vision 2020 could look like. And so we did that process several months ago, and we came up with this concept. And so we developed this concept in the hopes that it would be a very clear conceptual framework to guide our work, and it has done that. So thankfully we had an initial data set that was forthcoming at the time that we met. It was forthcoming because it hadn't been executed quite yet, but the survey was conducted by Gallup. It was distributed to our students, grades 5th through 12th. There were 5,800 participants, which is an amazing response rate for a survey, and that quantitative data was then crunched, and then it was brought into our discussion, and then that was what helped guide some of our overall framework. So the main items that Dr. Tucker talked about, engagement, hope, entrepreneurial aspirations, and career financial literacy, those became are 4 primary pillars for us to guide our work. And then what we decided to do is we decided to align our key stakeholders into this process. So we determined that our key stakeholders for the district were students, teachers, administrators, the community, and then also more specifically business leaders within the community. Then from a structural standpoint, some of our operating procedures included the items on the bottom, which are resources provided. We've lost our feed here, so good thing we've got paper, right? So we have resources provided, we have process standards. We intended this entire process to be scalable, and then most importantly, we wanted it to be measurable. And so those are some of our guiding principles that went throughout this process. Also, we have co-leaders of each of the committee's basically subgroups. So one of the challenging parts about working within a district where there's so many dynamic programs is that we've got to create a simple model moving forward to where we can actually see impact, especially when you're working with a lot of volunteers that don't necessarily have to show up to the committee meetings. And so in order to incentivize them to participate, we asked them to do more, and so we brought them into those subcommittees, and we basically said, if you would like to be part of our Vision 2020 committee, then we are asking that you participate in one of our subcommittees. So we went through the process of identifying the top 2 areas for the subcommittees that sparked interest in each of the stakeholders in our first meeting. And so the participants chose 2, and then we directed them into one of those 2 areas that were most meaningful or relevant to them. So we had co-leaders that we had identified early in the process. One was a community leader, and then one was a district employee. And so those 2 co-leaders were the people who would be guiding the work of each of these subgroups. We didn't want necessarily to have all of the focus be on the facilitators, as I said before, as opposed to we wanted it to be more driven by the co-leaders who could be directing the conversation as well as creating accountability for the overall outcomes. So as we did that, the co-leaders have done a great job in facilitating the discussion, and we had an initial meeting, and in the initial meeting we determined a couple of critical areas in each of our subgroups. So in HOPE, we determined that creating connections, exploring outside of our current realm, and then also creating intentional systems would facilitate an opportunity for hope to occur among students. And then for engagement, we talked about relevant experiences needed to take place. We needed to have continuous improvement no matter what programs that we evaluated or what initiatives we started. For entrepreneurial aspiration, we wanted to ensure that it would be student-focused as opposed to just a conceptual, but we really wanted that to be an organic discussion that comes from our students and what they really would like. And then for financial and career literacy, we wanted it to be student choice, and we also determined that there needed to be marketing and awareness that would take place within the district itself. And so the concept of internal marketing may not necessarily be a common perception, but it's something that it's needed in a district that is growing and where there are a lot of opportunities. Once we established that, then we looked at the data, and the data was very interesting. And one of the things about data is that it always tells a story. And the data told us a very interesting story, and it really helped guide some of our initial work. Once we determined the data and what the data was telling us, then our subgroups, they took that data, they met as a subgroup, and then they developed their overall plan for moving forward. And so we realized that the plan moving forward would not just end at the end of this spring semester. Rather, it would be an ongoing plan that they would continue to iterate over and over. So some of the other things that have come out of this is that our process for the Vision 2020 has changed from maybe 1 or 2 really large subgroups to more kind of smaller, a little bit more nimble groups, the 4 subcommittees, 4 subgroups that are aligned with each of these 4 components of the Gallup poll. So it was data-driven from a quantitative standpoint. We had full stakeholder involvement that was representative of our entire community, and then most importantly, this has become a very iterative process. So last time that we met, several weeks ago, all of the subcommittees had met, and we came together, and we basically created an opportunity to share out with the other groups. And so all 4 groups took about 10 minutes. They shared about their progress, their process. Some groups were a little bit ahead of the others due to various reasons, and it's absolutely fine. And so in that, those 4 groups created accountability and even created kind of a list of best practices to take away to implement with their current group. We also recorded some of the things that each of the groups were focusing on, and I'll go over a couple of those right now. So for the engagement group, their overall takeaway from their initial meeting was that they wanted to ensure that there was an increase in learner voice and choice, or an increase in experiential learning. They felt like without experiential learning and without really bolstering the current experiential learning opportunities, it would be difficult to increase the overall engagement score. Some of those programs include project-based learning and design-based thinking, higher levels of rigor and relevance, the new STEAM program, so it's STEM plus the arts. The Northline CAPS and internships are great opportunities for high school students. And so there's a lot of programs within Liberty that focus in on engagement, but the data would suggest that not everyone is necessarily fully engaged in the process. And so there is opportunity for growth there. The next one is entrepreneurial aspiration, and Liberty Public Schools, it scores low compared to the national average. The biggest gap in entrepreneurial aspiration was the question that said, I plan to start my own business. And so in that gap, although sometimes when you look at the data, it stings just a little bit, it was just a perfect opportunity for us to create focus for that group. So that group right now is reviewing some of the current curriculum within our entrepreneurship programs, and they are also speaking with students and teachers to see what are some of the opportunities that exist there. With career and financial literacy, they are also spending time looking at the financial curriculum, and they met in late March, and then they will report out more of a full report in the next 4 to 6 weeks as we reconvene with the overall group when we report out. But there were definitely opportunities for career and financial literacy, especially as it related to just overall readiness for students going from their current grade to the next step, especially for high school students that are stepping out after high school. And then the final one was HOPE. And with the HOPE group, one of the interesting findings is that HOPE is not significantly related to native intelligence or income. And so HOPE is a very, very critical component to keeping students fully engaged and feeling valued in their overall educational experience. It's linked consistently to attendance, to credits earned, and to academic achievement. And so those two, they correlate, and that's very, very important, and it reinforces our emphasis on each of those areas because we know that the overall outcome will lead to hope. Hopeful middle school students have better grades and higher achievement test scores, which is very important. And then finally, the predictive power of hope remains significant even when controlling for intelligence, prior grades, self-esteem, and college entrance exam scores. So I know that the committee just met, and it sounds like they've got 5 or 6 different initiatives that they're really thinking through and wanting to focus on. And one of the things that Charlene and I said at our last meeting, and this is very, very difficult to do, but we said we want you to come back with one idea or one initiative. One of the challenges of so many programs and so many great people in the room is that we want to solve a lot of problems. But our commitment is that we want to be iterative in the process to where we have an actual outcome that we can build upon. And so the concept of sending up test balloons there's nothing wrong with that. So if we have a philosophy within our Vision 2020 group of starting small, that's data-driven, and then in hopes of winning big and creating over the next few years a catalog of small successes that will lead to significant impact, then we will have succeeded as a Vision 2020 group. So I have certainly been inspired as a parent and as someone who is in education. I'm in higher education, but I've been inspired by the process and by the buy-in of our subgroups. It is evident that each of the subgroups are taking this work seriously, and the work is structured in a way that it aligns with data that is already telling us the story of what's most important and the gaps, opportunities that exist. And so I'm confident that when we meet again, the conversation will be robust and we will continue to move forward in our overall commitment of ensuring that our students are well served in each of these 4 areas. So at this time, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about our process, about some of the initial outcomes, and then maybe some of the next steps as we move forward, because we are by in no means done with the work. We are in the process of moving forward. Yes?
How many people are involved in Vision 2020 overall?
Yeah, so we have, the groups range in size, but we have between 6 and 10 participants for each of the groups. Some are a little bit bigger, some are a little bit smaller, and we were pleased with the participation, and we absolutely are looking for more and more volunteers. It's an opportunity for community members to be involved in a process that will lead to an outcome. And we're not necessarily trying to boil the ocean because it's a big ocean, but we are trying to take things that are meaningful and actionable, and we need help. We need the buy-in of all of our community, and so there is absolutely room on each of the subgroups in order to assist. And even if someone is interested in coming in and just listening to our process, we would welcome that as well. So the invitation is open and available to everyone. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Let's express appreciation to Dr. Scheer for his update this morning. As he alluded to, the invitation is open to engage with Vision 2020 in this continued work. We will plan on having one more meeting before the school year ends, and hopefully with some more definitive plans moving forward, albeit it will be fluid, and then pick up with this work again next year. So it's an exciting endeavor, and as we mentioned, as a parent, and I know Corey's a parent as well, of students in the district, you certainly want your kids to be hopeful, to be engaged, to be prepared for the future, and I think that's what we're posturing ourselves to be ready to do in terms of the initiatives that come out of Vision 2020. So thank you for your participation this morning, and we look forward to engaging you within Vision 2020's work in the future. Thank you.